Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's frequency meditation. Hope we all had a beautiful New Year's, and let's have an amazing 2026. So tonight, this frequency meditation approaches addiction, but not from the typical point of view. We're going to look at it through regulation, biology, and actually direct experience rather than what usually is described through addiction is shame, control. Modern neuroscience shows that behavior actually follows nervous system states. So it's not that your nervous system is your emotional, if you like, your emotional outlet is a result of your behavior. It's the other way around. It's how your nervous system is, and that's how your emotions fluctuate. So when internal regulation stabilizes, then choices appears naturally. And this mirrors long-standing insights from contemplative traditions that point to presence as the ground of clarity. At a deeper level, though, addiction originates from the same place as what we're all doing here, the spiritual search. Many people who experience addiction are sensing more depth. There's more intelligence. There's more possibility than everyday conditioning supports. There's an innate yearning to reconnect with something larger, more whole, more timeless. Look at your own experience. So substances and compulsive behaviors, what do? They promise access to that state. They stimulate it, seduce it. And yes, momentarily imitate it. Yeah, they never actually deliver that state. But the same yearning is present in people on our conscious or spiritual path. It's a default setting of the human system rather than a flaw. It's actually how we evolve. Always seeking a wholer version of ourselves. And everything that enters this level of density does so to assist the merging of lived experience with our timeless self, our wholer self. It's what we're doing here. It's what awakening is merging this limited, time-bound being with that limitless, timeless self. Every religion talks about that. So, of course, we've built in with that yearning to do that. It's a natural human program. So addiction is not separate from that movement. It's just a distorted expression of it. And when internal orientation and regulation are available, we become more centered, less fragmented. The system stops searching externally for it. But when these pathways are not available, the system searches externally. And frustration builds when the pathway inwards feels inaccessible. And substitutes appear efficient. They seem to offer relief, coherence, or expansion, everything we're trying to do here. But unfortunately, and this is the big O, too bad, the results never will satisfy the original signal. So what happens is it's a repeat. searching for more. Repeat, repeat, repeat. And that's when this label addiction, because it starts to take over the quality of our life. Well, there's many definitions of addiction, but when you're doing something and you choose not to, but you keep doing it, and as a result, the quality of your life decreases. And there's a spectrum to that, obviously. But that's a classical definition of addiction. So that's what addiction occurs, because that seeking keeps repeating, searching, but never being fulfilled. And I can speak about addiction from the inside. As a personal experience, I stopped using substances in my mid-20s. I've been sober ever since. But what becomes clear over time, that although I was, if you like, released from the substance abuse, so I was sober, that sobriety alone did not end the seeking. It simply redirected it into more acceptable forms. But the drive itself remained until this internal orientation, coming into myself centered, that orientation I was searching for became available directly from within finally. And when this frequency stabilized, the pull of addiction dissolved at every level, and without effort or control or any thought process. And this is actually, for using that definition, this is the truest definition of addiction. Everything that comes into density is here to help us align. Everything. And that's a big, bold statement. But the true definition of addiction is exactly that, to have that yearning to connect to a more complete version of yourself, a higher version of yourself, however you refer to it. Because that is the evolutionary process. But as just stated, it's been distorted. And so addiction has become this thing that imprisons people, instead of it being a mechanism to make that awareness with the wholer version of you. So let's just take a breath in right now, all of us coming together. And if you hear noises in the background, it's my puppy dog. No matter how much I try and not have him do the zoomies when I don't want to, he does. But use that. Use any noise in the background to center you instead of distracting you. And just begin exactly where you are right now. Your mind may still be active. The environment may still feel busy as we take another breath in, feeling that air in your lungs. Sounds, they move in the space around you right now. None of this interference with what is happening here. In fact, is part of how this works. Instead of trying to quiet anything, attention starts by registering the environment. So register the sounds in the background. In your home. The mind. It's all registering your environment. Space has direction. Sound has distance. Movement has rhythm. Taking another breath in. The nervous system uses this information, and we're just bringing more coherence. Your nervous system uses this information to locate itself in the present moment. This is what I refer to when I mean orientation. And it's one of the primary ways the brain establishes stability. So notice your body right now. Because from here, attention naturally includes the body. There's contact with a surface beneath you. There's weight, there's gravity. These signals travel through sensory pathways that tell the brainstem where you are and when you are. So regulation begins through registration, not control. Now just bring our attention to rest lightly at a center point inside the body, behind the breastbone. Feel the heart area. It's the center of our sphere. I refer to it as an architectural sphere. Don't worry about the term. It's just a way of relating information. But it's a reference point rather than a focus exercise. So attention may drift and return. That movement strengthens actually orientation. So nothing's corrected, nothing is forced. Just by bringing your attention there, and as it moves off, it comes back. And again, this process, although we might register, oh, I'm not centered, that's bad. This is actually the process that's orientating you. And just as contact with the center repeats, the nervous system receives a consistent internal signal. Those predictive loops, often timing starts improving. And presence emerges as a byproduct of coherence rather than this thing we have to achieve, we have to accomplish to do it. So right now we're just supporting the nervous system and recognizing safety through where you're positioning yourself, your centeredness, rather than control. Having to direct the mind. Let's just stay here. And then from here, just come to the center of your brain, that center point, another sphere. Noticing the left side and noticing the right side. And then just coming centered, and this is where we stay. This is our launch pad. This is our home. This is where everything originates from. So we're here centered in our body, for the sphere in our brain, and then our other architectural sphere that we visited centers us in space and time, orientates us. There's nothing religious here. This is more subquantum physics. With a lot of magic. Taking another breath in. As we're centered in our spheres, well, the environment continues around you. Sounds remain, space remains. What changes, as you've probably noticed, the environment, your inner environment has slowed down, quietened, became more still, more expansive, less noisy. So what changes, though, these sounds of space, is how they land. Because your system moves from scanning to registering. This reflects a measurable shift in nervous system state. I think it's in science described as polyvagal sensory integration research. Anyways, there's lots of science behind all this. But I'm not concerned about that, because what we do is experiential. You become aware of a different state you're in. And when this happens, input becomes clearer and less intrusive. Your perception widens, yet while you're still staying very grounded. This is what ancient traditions describe as clarity. Taoist teachings, I think they refer to it as alignment with the natural way. And again, it's more neuroscience. Talks about it as an integration across sensory, emotional, cognitive networks, our nervous system. Hence, so really, here it's experienced directly, a steadiness that includes the world. So from this stable reference point, just noticing how you feel right now, centered, when you're here, the system can recognize what seeking leading into that future moment has always been about. And these repeated urges, we defined as addiction sometimes, and they're registered in your nervous system as signals rather than commands. So they arise when the system senses more depth, there's more coherence, there's more possibility than it can currently stabilize. I'll say that again. These aren't that you're out of control and you just have an urge to use something. It's not just substances, money, sex, persona, people. There's many ways that we're trying to seek something higher, clearer, that's there. But when your system's coherent, it doesn't register it as something, as an action that has to be fulfilled. Again, it registers as a signal saying, there's something around. My system has a yearning, that evolutionary yearning, that there's more depth out there. There's more coherence. There's something bigger, more brilliant that I'm experiencing right now. So addiction appears as an information rather than failure. It reflects a very deep, innate yearning to reconnect with something whole and timeless. But of course, we never take accountability or responsibility because most people are buried in shame and abuse. Actually, abuse is created to even create more shame. But with the world we live in, substances and compulsive behaviors seduce that longing. We're advertising promotes it. So there's culture. But as mentioned earlier, it can stimulate it, it can imitate it, and promise access to it, yet it can never deliver it. So the system keeps reaching because the original signal. Just take another breath in right now and notice your whole spine. The original signal still remains unresolved. So this illusion of relief, this illusion of having that connection, it never satisfies that original request. But as we breathe in, and as your internal regulation strengthens, this pattern updates in real time. So that urgency softens. Actual seeking starts to loosen. What's really amazing about this is that the system recognizes that the yearning in itself was valid. What changes is where it is fulfilled. Right in the center of your sphere, your brain right now, just coming to that center, just start dropping down your spine all the way down. So you hit that heart area, breastbone. Just note as you're traveling down this other sphere of yours, that architectural sphere where you're centered, you're not leaning forward. In future moments, you're not leaning past, not to the left or the right, up or down. You're just centered and keep on going down right to the core of the earth. You have access to these frequencies. They'll center you, assist in centering you. Pretty well. Most precision and density that we have here. And then coming back up through the spine with these frequencies, right up back to our sphere. Just staying, resting here, center of our sphere in our brain. Centered. Owning where we are. From here, the system recognizes that repeated seeking behaviors. They arise when internal regulation feels frustrated, inconsistent. Of course, as we have probably experienced ourselves, that dopamine amplifies urgency, but any sort of internal supply is frustrated or seems unreliable. But this mechanism evolved to support survival, learning, adaptation. It only became problematic when substitutes are used to replace the regulation itself, like what's happened in today's society. But when we start to see it from this perspective, addiction actually carries information rather than judgment. Again, as we breathe in and we're centered in our sphere, we notice our spine. We see these cravings. It signals a search for coherence, relief, expansion. That awareness that we are connected to something wholer than the fractal that we are here right now in density. And as this internal regulation strengthens, and it strengthens by just by coming centered, observing, being aware, letting the system interpret these impulses. As we keep doing that, and that strengthens, urgency reduces even more, seeking softens even more. And those choices that we need to do the next moment, it's very clear. It's effortless. And this is the doorway. When your system registers internal sufficiency, internal coherence, substitutes, they lose their charge. And they return to being tools rather than anchors, as mentioned earlier, as we breathe in. The pure definition of what addiction is, why it's here, to help us, guide us, send us that signal there might be more out there. And the substitutes won't work. And that's when you really unveil that awareness of the connection you always are. So from the center of our sphere, just let your attention register how the nervous system predicts relief. In other words, in neuroscience, this is described as prediction error. It's like when the system expects regulation from an external source. So for instance, say if you're thinking, it would be nice to have that alcoholic beverage or that chocolate or heroin, whatever it might be, sex. When your system expects that regulation to come from that source, urgency increases and the body starts to prepare for action. So your thoughts start to organize around acquisition. And it feels convincing because the brain is doing its job. But as internal orientation strengthens, coming to our sphere or spine, that prediction recalibrates. Your system updates its expectations, but it's based on present moment data rather than memory. I know this is a heady thing for a lot of people, but we're doing it at a frequency level anyways, so it will all come to you, but more importantly, it's how you're rendering yourself here right now. But when your nervous system starts to experience being in the present moment and what it requires, instead of going backwards into memory, that urgency that we talked about, it loses its edge. That reward system shifts from pursuit to assessment. So in other words, instead of pulling forward, it pauses. on our 2 weeks meditations, we have that pause button. It pauses. It checks whether action is really required. Very often it concludes it's not then. This isn't suppression. Suppression is a very different thing. It's not. Suppression just builds. It's a correction through actually accurate information from within. Your system learns again in real time, where regulation actually really originates as from the center, from where you are. That center point in your sphere, in your brain, the center point in the sphere in your heart. You'll feel it. So this isn't something to learn or to memorize and implement. This is beyond the mind. The mind just observes the experience, the shift in your perspective, how you feel, how those urges are not so urgent. So just notice you right now in your body. Those sounds earlier, those other sounds, just notice the sounds right now. Notice where they're coming from, and then just notice again you and your body, maybe your collarbone. If there's any smells in there right now, notice the smells, where they're coming from. And notice the tip of your nose. What are you making contact with right now? Are you sitting on the sofa? You're walking on the floor, lying on the bed? Just notice whatever's making contact with your skin or your clothes. And then notice your whole spine. Taste in your mouth. Notice the taste. And then your intestines. And just keep your eyes closed still right now, or if they're open, close your eyes. We just use 4 of the physical senses to locate you in your body. And I think that tonight's transmission, we're going to bring it into 2 parts. Next Sunday, we'll do the second part. There's so many aspects that have come in. But what matters is to understand this we did tonight. Addiction was never the problem. Whether it's for you or family members, or I'm sure there's someone, but we all have addictions. As I said, the purest definition is here for us for our evolutionary process. Of course, we have derivatives of it. That's what we're doing here in density. So I think it'll be hard-pressed for someone to say, I have no addiction to anything. Exercise, coffee, sleeping, joy, connecting to my higher self, drugs, whatever. But whatever it is, addiction was never the problem. It was information. It was a system pointing towards a doorway that it didn't know how to enter from within yet. And we can reference our own spiritual addiction. When internal orientation then becomes available, that urgency, that panic, quiets. That compulsion relaxes. The seeking, wanting to be in that next moment, just settles. you come into a space that nothing needs to be fought or controlled. The pressure we put on people who are suffering to control these impulses. And of course it's defeat. Now you know why. So the solution is not to demonize people, shame them, judge them. Gabor Mate talks a little bit about this in some of his work, which I'm sure he'll further on. But he touches on it. So it's about helping people restore that inner orientation, allowing regulation, clarity, coherence to arise directly from the body and nervous system, rather than that being borrowed from outside. Just awareness, guidance that people are seeking. And again, that restoration begins through recognition, not effort. So before we close, let's just allow a moment for the system to register what is already reorganized tonight. Just let the body remain exactly as it is. Tension rests in the center of your sphere. Orientation, that centeredness, settles inwards. In the doorway, it recognizes itself. That doorway to what you're truly seeking. It's always there. So we'll continue this next Sunday. Today establishes the understanding and internal orientation, recognizing what addiction has been pointing towards all along. And so next Sunday, I always do these in real time, so I don't, I think why we decided that it was too much for one go is that we're going to move into how this orientation stabilizes in the body, how it remains available under pressure. And actually how this doorway, it becomes a really lived, ongoing state rather than something briefly accessed. And that's been my experience. Which is why I said that those frequencies of addiction, not the pure definition, but the derivatives, if you like, they just don't exist for me anymore because there's nowhere, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not coming back to, I'm not leaning forward. I'm in it. That's what happens. You become part of the system, your nervous system, it's all one. There's no seeking anything. Not to say you're always centered, but it's no big deal. You just come back. And if you have anybody in your life who's suffering from a form, maybe pass on this. It's on a replay. They can come next week. It's not to replace anything they're doing, but maybe it's to give some clarity, maybe some self-love, that maybe they're not that misfit after all, but in fact just a very sensitive, heightened being seeking what we're actually here to seek. With that, I'll leave everybody till next week. I hope you have an amazing week.